I have scoured the interwebs for OPXY content, and I haven't found much focus specifically on using longer samples and just how they react with all of the different components that the OPXY has to offer. Obviously, with a step sequencer workflow, there's going to be a different reaction using one-shots versus longer samples. But in particular, with all of these weird OPXY Teenage Engineering-esque pages, everything really reacts differently to longer loops and samples. Big surprise, this is one of my videos, so a lot of this will be focused on longer percussive samples. I'm also going to get this notion of the heavy price of the OPXY just out of the way right at the beginning of the video. I actually put together a full video on other pieces of gear that you could buy for the same price as the OPXY, so here's a link to that. There's a ton of other competing gear on the market. But of course, if you think that the OPXY fits for you or you think that it's worth it, then it's your choice whether or not you buy it. That's the bottom line. If in the end you do decide to pick up the OPXY and also the OPZ, because that's a unit that I compare to the OPXY a lot, it might be like a safer out for you, a much less expensive out. There are affiliate links to both of these units in the description of this video. Using those links is a huge support to this channel, and also it doesn't cost you anything extra. I also have a Patreon with a growing catalog of exclusive content, extended videos, also free samples or like sneak peeks into sample packs. It would be absolutely great to have you there. There is a lot of information in this video, so if you'd like to jump to something specific, make sure to use the timestamps also linked in the description of this video and all of my videos. I have a lot of experience with teenage engineering gear in general, so I've got to start off with some comparisons. I feel like it's my duty to compare this to other TE gear. In my opinion, where does this sit in the OP family? I personally think that in terms of workflow, despite it looking a lot like the OP1, the actual workflow is a lot more similar to the OPZ. Also sonically, there's a lot of crossover there as well. Of course, you've got a very precise, like descriptive screen here. The graphics are also very cool. It's definitely not as plastic feeling as the OPZ. It really feels like a premium product. It's built very well. It just feels nice. It looks nice. Like a lot of other teenage engineering gear, it just has that effect of like, what is that? I need to know what that is right away. I'm not 100% sure what the step component or per step per RAM lock limit is as compared to the OPZ, but you definitely do have more flexibility in terms of how many params you could lock, which params that you could lock. So stepping a little bit closer to an electron sequencer in that sense. Also, I think that's kind of what they were going for. It looks a little bit more like an electron sequencer in terms of the color palette, or I should say lack of color palette, right? It's just shades of gray, white, and black. That's one thing about the OPZ. It does give you that relatively precise per step precision, but over time, as you keep adding param locks to, specific steps, you'll notice that past param locks that you added just start to fall out. It sort of takes you out of it. Whereas that's not an issue that I've run into with the OPXY. I know it's always tempting to check out new gear. Definitely check out the OPZ. There's a good chance that you'd be able to cover everything that you need to with the OPZ, a unit that is, I think, 1/4 of the price or maybe 1/3 of the price of the OPXY. On top of that, it's still the teenage engineering workflow. It's still a really portable piece of gear that you could bring anywhere. It's even more portable than the OPXY. The triggers or step components down here, they behave very similarly to the OPZ. Same as with the punch-in effects, this page right here. Even sonically on the punch-in effects page, there's like a fill option here. Yeah, this is very similar to the OPZ. The synth engines on the OPZ are definitely not as deep as the ones on the OPZY or the OP1 field. And cleverly, if that's a word, that's what you're getting. You're getting a mix of the OPZ as well as the OP1, which gives you the OPXY. It all makes so much sense. And over top of all this, not that it really matters, the OPZ was my first synth, and I've also linked an OPZ playlist in the description of this video if you'd like to look a little bit deeper into it. Consider all that information before dropping bad money. How to upload samples onto the OPXY. It's super simple. You just have to hit this button up here, COM. Currently MTP isn't available because I'm not connected to my computer, but you would just hit MTP, number 4. After that, the OPXY, what would you call it? Bank would show up on your computer, and from there you could just drop your samples into the samples folder. It's super simple. Once that's all done, you hit shift and the samples icon here, and then you would scroll all the way up to the top, and that's where your sample bank is, like the user sample bank. Here's my little folder of samples. Surprise, it's all drum samples from my latest sample pack, Techno Starters Volume 1, all multi-track based samples, some of which sound like this. This brings us to the next important thing, which is how to organize your samples on the OPXY, especially when it comes to drums, which occupy all of the frequencies. And each frequency is going to react differently to all of the, the effects punch-in page here, even on the mixer page where you're able to param lock, delay, or reverb, or whatever effects that you want to add in there. On track 1, I've got my kick, and I've got this like weird rim thing, which I'm actually going to raise the volume of a little bit. So let's put both of these on beat 1. So right now, this is just a 1-bar sequence, right? These are each 16th notes. If I want to extend this, maybe let's make this a 4-bar thing. Go back to our sequence. And you can see that the playhead is moving a lot slower. I actually really like that there's no separate page options. Like everything is all on one page. It's just a playhead that's moving a little bit slower. I find that it's a lot cleaner and easier to keep track of like this. So the kick is the kick. I'm just going to let it go because it's a 4 on the floor sort of thing. The rim thing though, let's just play around and see what we could do here. Okay, cool. So that gives us a bit of a different thing on the rim. Let's go to track 2 or channel 2. And this frequency is more the high end. So hi-hats as well as this little snare thing. I'm pretty sure that this is just a repetitive pattern with the hi-hats. So we don't need to extend this. I like that. And then on track 3, we have this tom thing. Let's go ahead and extend this to a 2-bar pattern on this particular voice. Put this onto beat 1. Let's do something a little bit weird here. Let's go ahead and switch up the effects. I've already switched it to lo-fi. And then on this first track, so I put it just on the kick sample, and what you notice is that it seems like the effects are monophonic because look, it gets cut off by this sample. So it's playing through to here, 2, 3, stops there, keeps going, stops there. So that's just interesting to know that the effects do seem to be monophonic. Same thing with on track 3, I absolutely want to lo-fi up that melody. Yes, a little bit of lo-fi going on here. How does the delay react to this as well? It's also worth noting, just to be extra clear on this, that if I wanted to, I could have put all of the drums that I just dispersed here onto one track because the sequence itself is not monophonic. It's polyphonic, but it's each of these keys individually that are monophonic, if you sort of understand what I mean there. I could very easily upload my samples, let's say, onto all of these keys and just stack them all onto beat 1 and have it play in one groove. But again, I wouldn't have that same sort of control as I do here where I could, isolate different frequencies that react in different ways. On the mixer page, there's also these other options here. So I think this is like some sort of filter. Might be cool to put a bit of a filter on that. And then page 3 is like the tone and the mix. Ooh, okay, cool. I'm liking this. What about step components? Let's take a look at that. For the most part, a lot of these step components actually don't work because they're more for like one-shot melody types of things. So I'll be sticking specifically to the more rhythmic ones. So we're on track 3. Let's go to this step specifically and let's pulse it up. Let's see what this does. And I think there's also an option to make it, so skip every second trig, which randomizes it even more. With the hi-hats, let's try this. Another set of parameters that I love here. This is like, I guess you could call it a master parameter on the tape reel. So here, I'm just gonna stop this. We could choose, that's cool. We could choose what frequency or what texture we want to add onto any of these steps here. So definitely the hi-hats at some point. Okay, so we got a double hi-hat at the end there. again, just like all of our other sequencers, if we want to, we could make this a longer sequence to make it, you know, a little bit more interesting, and a longer loop with different variations. The only downside of this is that as you increase the size of your sequence, you can see that the playhead gets less and less precise. So this is the only downside of having everything on one page. So we're gonna try this, see what this does. That's cool. Maybe tune these down a little bit, these little steps. Okay. It's getting a little funky. This is very Teenage Engineering, very, the OPZ definitely has this sort of quality as well. Now there's two more effects or param pages that we could look at here. So this is the punch-in performance effects page. This affects the entire track altogether, so it's like a master thing. But what I found is that if you enter any of these in, let's say this one here, it just doesn't seem to work. I think it's because it's a longer sample. I think it's better for shorter, like one-shot samples or grooves that have been created with one-shots. But just to give you an idea of what some of this sounds like. I can't explain what all these effects are doing. Where is beat one? I don't know. Let's fill. Right, so again, this is very OPZ. This is like exactly how the OPZ reacts to this sort of groove as well. And then there's this page here, the brain page, which I think is more of a melodic page, clearly, if you want to choose a specific type of scale. Right, so Phrygian, Dorian, all the different modes that you could choose. But also, they react to longer drum samples as well in different ways. And it gives these kind of interesting, cool textures. So let's say you got all your shit together, you worked your groove out on the OPXY, it's sounding great, it's sounding the way that you want it to sound. You could continue to have fun with it in the box, right? Just keep it in the box, or I should say in the rectangle. Or maybe you'd want to continue this work elsewhere and export these stems that you just came up with, or these tracks, into your DAW. Well, based on what I've read so far, you can't, which kind of sucks. This is a big downfall of the OPZ as well. It makes it more of like a fun box as opposed to something that you could use in a bit more of like a serious context. That's something that could definitely change with an update in the future, because with the OP1 or even the OG OP1, you're able to export your stems individually. But for now, it is what it is. You decide whether or not that works for you or your workflow. That's a lot of information. Now let's talk about today's sponsor, DistroKid. If you are an artist or producer looking to release your own music onto all major streaming platforms, DistroKid is by far the most affordable option to go with. And here's a few reasons why they're great. In terms of what's new, they recently released a smartphone app, which makes checking your important DistroKid stats easy and accessible. The app is now available on Android through the Play Store. Essentially everything that you've been able to do on the DistroKid desktop app, you're now able to do through your smartphone. In today's day and age, we all know how many hats we have to wear as artists and producers. It can just be a lot, so write the music, produce the music. Then you've got to create content to promote it a few weeks before it's released. Then you've got to continue creating content after it's been released to promote it. It's a lot, and I'm not saying that DistroKid does all of this work for you, but they do make it a lot easier for us with the free promotional tools that they offer. The one I use most is Hyperfollow. It's essentially a free landing page or link tree. It's super clean. You could link maybe your latest video, your latest single, other important links you'd like to lead people to. I also use promo cards whenever I release a single. Just select the single that you would like to promote and it'll auto-generate a few different options for you to choose from. Go with DistroKid. It's just over $20 a year to release unlimited music to all major streaming platforms. You keep 100% of your streaming royalties. So many other tools that they offer for someone who's independent. They're made for us. And there is a discount linked in the description of this video if you would like to join.